Kathāvatthu. Points of controversy or subjects of discourse. Translated by Shwe Aung, B. A. and M.R.S. Rhys Davids, M. A. Theravāda. The Kathāvatthu is a collection of over-discussions on points of interpretation of Buddhist doctrine. These consist of a debate between unnamed protagonists. Each relies either on logic or quotations from the suttas to support their arguments. While the text does not identify the points of view, most of the significant points may be identified with the doctrines held by various Buddhist schools. Note that none of the controverted points deal with Brahmanical, Jaina, or other non-Buddhist views. Nor are there any significant differences when it comes to the suttas. Each debater assumes that they share a common sutta basis. The Kathāvatthu is the only book of the Abhidhamma ascribed by the Theravāda to a specific author, Moggaliputtatissa, a senior monk at the time of King Ashoka. The core of the work probably formed then, but it grew substantially over time. Kathāvatthu is a Buddhist scripture, one of the 7 books in the Theravāda Abhidhamma Pitaka. The text contrasts the orthodox Theravāda position on a range of issues to the heterodox views of various interlocutors. The latter are not identified in the primary source text, but were speculatively identified with specific schools of thought in the commentaries. The original text is putatively dated to coincide with the reign of King Ashoka, but this, too, is debatable. Though the core of the text may have begun to take shape during Ashoka's reign. Bhikkhu Sujito notes that the work as a whole cannot have been composed at that time. For it is the outcome of a long period of elaboration, and discusses many views of schools that did not emerge until long after the time of Ashoka. Organization. The Kathāvatthu documents over points of contention. The debated points are divided into 4 Panasaka. Each Panasaka is again divided, into chapters in all. In addition, 3 more Vagga follow the 4 Panasaka. Each chapter contains questions and answers by means of which the most diverse views are presented, refuted, and rejected. The form of the debates gives no identification of the participants, and does not step outside the debate to state explicitly which side is right. The views deemed non-heretical by the commentaries' interpretation of the Kathāvatthu were embraced by the Theravāda denomination. According to the commentaries, those whose views were rejected include the Sarvastivada. Doctrinal positions. The text focuses on refuting the views of various Buddhist schools. These include the views of the Moggaliputtatissa school, which held that a person exists as a real and ultimate fact and that it transmigrates from one life to the next. That a perfected being can fall away from perfection. The views of the Sarvastivadins, that all dharmas exists in the 3 times, a form of temporal eternalism. That an arhat can have a nocturnal emission. That an arhat may be lacking in knowledge, have doubts, or be excelled by others. That the duration of an awareness event can last a day or more. That penetration and insight into the various stages of enlightenment is achieved gradually. That the Buddha's worldly speech was somehow supramundane. That all the powers of the Buddha are also possessed by his leading disciples. That a layperson can become an arhat. That one can attain enlightenment at the moment of rebirth. That the 4 noble truths, the immaterial states, space, and dependent origination are unconditioned. That there is an intermediate state of existence. That all dhammas last for only a moment. That all is due to karma. That it ought not be said the monastic order accepts gifts. That the Buddha himself did not teach the Dharma, but that it was taught by his magical creation. That one who has attained jhana continues to hear sound. That the 5 gravest transgressions involve immediate retribution even when committed unintentionally. That final liberation can be obtained without eliminating a certain fetter. The inclusion of the Kathāvatthu in the Abhidhamma Pitaka has sometimes been thought of as something of an anomaly. First, the book is not regarded as being the words of the Buddha himself. Its authorship is traditionally attributed to Moggaliputtatissa. However, this is not unusual. The Vinyasa accounts of the first 2 councils are obviously also not the Buddha's actual words. Second, the subject matter of the Kathāvatthu differs substantially from that of the other texts in the Abhidhamma, but this is true of the Moggaliputtatissa as well. Scholars sometimes also point to the inclusion of some obviously later sections of the Kathāvatthu in the Tipitaka as an indication that the Pali Canon was more open than has sometimes been thought, and as illustrative of the process of codifying new texts as canonical. In fact, this too is not unusual, there being quite a bit of relatively late material in the canon. Interpretation. The debates are understood by the tradition, followed by many scholars, as disputes between different schools of Buddhism. However, L.S. Cousins, described by Professor Gombrich as the West's leading Abhidhamma scholar, says, in spiritual traditions the world over, instructors have frequently employed apparent contradictions as part of their teaching method, perhaps to induce greater awareness in the pupil or to bring about a deeper and wider view of the subject in hand. The Pali Canon contains many explicit examples of such methods. Translations. Aung, Shwe, Rhys David Caf. Points of Controversy or Subjects of Discourse, being a translation of the Kathāvatthu from the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Pali Text Society, London. 7 Books of Abhidhamma. Dhammasangani, Enumeration of Phenomena I. Good states of consciousness. Bad states of consciousness. Indeterminate states of consciousness. Various aspects of form. For elimination, various causes, intoxicants, fetters, ties, floods, bonds, hindrances, contagions, graspings, corruptions, etc. Vibhanga, the book of analysis of aggregates. Bases. Elements. Truths. Faculties. Dependent origination. Method of meditation, right effort, mystical, enlightenment factors, path constituents, trance states, illimitables, training precepts, analytic insight, knowledge, etc. Datukatha, discussion with reference to the elements i.e. associations and dissociations, classifications and unclassifications of various phenomena. Moggaliputtatissa, designation of individuals i.e. various human types categorized in many ways from 1 to 10. Kathāvatthu, points of controversy or debates. Questions and answers i.e. FAQ chapter. Yamaka, the book of pairs of questions on roots, aggregates, bases, elements, truths, formations, latent states, consciousness, phenomena, and sense faculties. Padhana, the book of relations on various internal phenomena i.e. Hichu. Aramana. Adhipati. Anantara. Samananthara. Sahajata, Anamana, Nisaya, Upanasaya, Purayata, Pachajata, Asavana, Kama, Vipaka, Ahara Indriya, Yahana, Maga, Sampayota, Vipayota, Atha, Natha, Vigata, Avagata Pakaya, etc.